As I mentioned earlier in the show, Israel's defense chief is saying that the U.S. and Israel have new intelligence that proves Iran is much closer to a clandestine nuclear bomb than ever before. Never mind that every single U.S. intelligence agency is saying Iran does not have a bomb and they're not building one. Forget the fact that the International Atomic Energy Agency, even with its pro-Israel, pro-U.S. bias, has not been able to document any diversion of nuclear materials for weapons research. By golly, when Israel says we know they've got a bomb, the U.S. will snap too. And they're cranking up the propaganda. They're trying to sell you this idea that Iran is a nuclear threat. Are they desperate enough to set off a nuclear bomb inside the U.S. or at the London Olympics and blame Iran for it? Of course they are. Just like they did 9/11 and blamed Iraq or Afghanistan for it. False flags are often used to start wars. We know there is at least one unaccounted for nuclear weapon floating around inside the United States of America from that incident involving the bomber that flew halfway across the United States of America, left with 6 nuclear weapons on the wing. When it got to its destination, there were only 5. And apparently the people involved in that whole thing all met mysterious and strange deaths in the months thereafter. Israel is screaming that improvised explosive devices are now being smuggled in from Lebanon. They're looking for another excuse to go into Lebanon and grab that Litani River. I think when the Big Bang happens, Israel is going to basically launch in every single direction. Because I think both Israel and the United States understand they're only maybe going to get away with one of these big lies one more time because the world is waking up to it. I don't think they can get away with it. I think we have created a climate of skepticism and doubt among the general population where a new claim of nuclear weapons in Iran is not going to be believed because we were lied to about Iraq's nuclear weapons. And a new false flag attack is not going to be accepted at face value because we've been lied to so many times before. I think that's the reality of where we are. Unfortunately, our future course of history is in the hands of whichever world leader is the least mentally stable. And frankly, most of them out there are certifiable as of right now as I see it. We are seeing more and more articles chastising Mitt Romney for his claim that Israel's superior economic status is a result of cultural superiority, and that obviously the Palestinians deserve to live in poverty because they just don't have the cultural cojones to compete with Israel. Forgetting the fact, of course, that Palestine is occupied by Israel, which does not allow in basic building materials, scientific equipment, educational supplies, medicines, very short on food. It's a long, slow starvation to encourage the Palestinians to go someplace else. And it's absurd, especially when you consider the incredible amounts of money that flow into Israel from the United States of America, Canada, Great Britain, all these other countries that Israel has subverted are paying imperial tithes to Tel Aviv, soon to be Jerusalem. And that's the reason for Israel's apparent wealth, which is concentrated in the upper class. That's why the Israeli people, students, are rioting right now. It's like imperial Rome. Rome was not built on Rome's own accomplishments. Rome was built on an unending flow of wealth looted from the conquered and captured provinces. And we're seeing a repeat of history. I put up a little article the other day about the Canadian government's continuing to kowtow further and further to Tel Aviv. And I found photos of, no, actually it was the European Union. And I found a photo of the flag of the European Union side by side with the flag of Israel. And I went out and I did a quick search, and I found all of these photos from all around the world of the flag of the nation flying right next to the flag of Israel. I found a photo of the Capitol building in Connecticut flying the Israeli flag over the Capitol building. So if you want to know who's behind all of this push for a global government, it's right there in front of you. When you're flying the flag of a foreign government next to the flag of your own nation, you are an occupied country. Which gets back to that comment that was made on the YouTube video, that opposition to communist subversion of the U.S. government is patriotism, but opposition to Israeli subversion of the U.S. government, that's anti-Semitism. Now, there are some new developments regarding the Fast and Furious gun-running, drug-running program, and it begins with this drug plane that was shot down. Let's see, a DC-9 airliner, two American registered planes, a DC-9 airliner and a Gulfstream business jet carrying 10 tons of cocaine. And apparently 4 Mexican generals were arrested in connection with this drug flight. And I mention this as a preface to an article that a captured Mexican drug cartel member has gone public saying Fast and Furious is not what you think it is. Zimbara Niebla claims that under a divide and conquer strategy, the U.S. is financing and arming the Sinaloa drug cartel through Operation Fast and Furious in exchange for information that allows the DEA, immigration, other federal agencies to take down all the rival drug cartels. The Sinaloa cartel was permitted to traffic massive amounts of drugs across the U.S. border from 2004 to 2009 as long as the intelligence kept coming. This is a repeat of Iran-Contra. The U.S. is helping the Sinaloa cartel form a drug monopoly in exchange for which the Sinaloa cartel sends the drugs through across the border to favored political cronies who are involved in the drug trade. It is an exact repeat of Iran-Contra. That's why they keep talking about, we sent all these thousands of guns south of the border and we were able to track 10 of them to bad people that we arrested. Has got nothing to do with it. Go out on a web search, The Crimes of Mina. History is repeating itself, which is, of course, what is wrong with history. Guns down, drugs back, everybody on the inside making tons and tons of money. So, of course, Bill O'Reilly steps up and says, we must continue the U.S. policy of drug interdiction and support for our allies overseas, yada, 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 yada. Alrighty. Now, earlier in the week, there was what we were told was a positive jobs report that kicked up the stock market a little tiny bit. And they were saying all these jobs were created and only these small jobs were lost and, huzzah, huzzah, things are looking good. Which is kind of weird because only 2 days before we had been seeing these cautionary pieces in the corporate media saying probably not a good idea to pay attention to the July jobs report, because of all that seasonal adjustment, and there's all these other things going on where really if it's a horribly bad jobs report, it won't really matter. And then, of course, 2 days later it comes out and says, actually, it's a good jobs report. And my comment at the time was, I think this job report is about as credible as the LIBOR rates, and it turns out to be absolutely correct, because the Bureau of Labor Statistics seems to have played around very heavily with seasonal adjustments. And the reality is the United States economy lost 1.2 million jobs in July. That is the actual hard reality, facts on the ground. But the U.S. government, through all of these statistical calculations and corrections, they massaged the data to get something that is politically acceptable in a campaign year. They're lying to you again. I know, big shock, you're surprised, but they are lying to you once again. We live in an age of lies. We in the United States are the most lied to people on the face of the earth, and we must stand up and fight for truth. All right, we're going to take another break for commercials. We'll be right back after these words from our sponsors. We're already seeing all over the corporate media, food prices are skyrocketing already and expected to go much, much worse. They're blaming global warming and space aliens and all the rest of it. But we're seeing a basic confluence of overlapping issues. First and foremost, lowered yields from genetically modified crops that are being forced on everybody. The collapse of America's Western irrigation system through long, long neglect. And the farmers out there have been screaming for ages that if this system was not fixed, it would trigger food shortages. Obama is keeping the ethanol quotas, which means there are large areas of working farmland that are growing crops for ethanol production, and which means they can't grow food. And they're keeping these boneheaded policies in place because in order to back down is to admit error, and nobody wants to do that in an election year. And despite all these warnings about food shortages, we are seeing more and more communities across the United States of America passing these ordinances that you can't grow food on your own property. You're not zoned for it. It may not be healthy, We have to make sure that you will go to that supermarket and buy your healthy, chemical-laden food from the friendly American corporations. You will be dependent on massa for your next meal, you slave you. And the gentleman up in Oregon who was collecting rainwater on his own property, the rain that fell from the sky, that's the property of the state, and you are not allowed to collect that because that belongs to us. And they put him in jail for 30 days. And my German accent notwithstanding, I'm pretty certain that even Adolf Hitler did not claim to own the rain that fell on people's homes in Nazi Germany. It's just absurd, the degree of dictatorship we are living under right now. Alrighty, let's see. Over in Great Britain, their hopes for an economic recovery were apparently based on the expectation that Britain would be exporting more products to the rest of the world, and apparently that is not working out. The balance of trade continues to be negative. People around the world aren't buying British products the way that they used to, and that may have a lot to do with the same reason people around the world aren't buying American products. It's the same reason people weren't buying products from Nazi Germany and Japan in the run-up to World War II. Everybody knows who the bad guy is, and nobody wants to have something from the bad guy. Speaking of bad guy, a listener actually found and sent in to me one of these ridiculous Barack Obama American flags, which you can see if you're watching this on Justin TV. I don't know what I'm going to do with this after using it here on the show. But this flag is such an insult. It's an insult to the 50 states whose stars were removed from the flag to make way for Obama's face. It's an insult to American veterans. It's certainly an insult to Republicans. The leader's face everywhere you look, the sign of a dictatorship. We're going to take a break for station identification. We'll be back with Don Wiskin after these words from our sponsor. Regular visit is Don Wiskin of Extendovite, and we have him on our show from time to time because, the reality is the alternative media, we're now becoming the mainstream, and we do have to pay the bills like everybody else, and we don't have Israel coming in and bribing us to report the news the way they want it to be done. So Republic Broadcasting and WhatReallyHappened.com, we have to make our money the old-fashioned way. We have to actually earn it. And so we are very, very grateful for advertisers like Extendovite, especially when it's a product that we can actually feel good about sharing with our listeners and readers. And Don, thank you for coming back on the show. And today I'd kind of like to talk to you, and I know you don't want to stray off the fact that this is basically to keep your heart and arteries healthy and everything. But earlier this week, we had fellow RBN host Mary Tocco on our show talking about the abuses of vaccines, and we've got another story that we're going to be covering later on about the adjuvants creating illnesses for which the medical establishment will sell us another cure for. But I don't mean to put you on the spot, but looking at the ingredients on your bottle, and it's all very good stuff, and it's all stuff we've evolved to be with. But getting beyond the obvious benefits to your heart and your circulatory system, I'm very curious personally, and I'm sure some of our listeners are, about how Extendovite is going to help your body deal with allergens, especially from some of these vaccine adjuvants. I know you said earlier on the show that there is a natural chelation effect of some of these components.
Absolutely, Michael, that's just the way it is. In the vaccination, the problem there mostly is the thimerosal, which is a form of mercury, and the mercury never leaves our body. We have to encourage it to leave, and that's where the chelating effects of the garlic come in, because it is, it's got over 70 different sulfur compounds, but about 30 of them will help to slowly chelate the heavy metals away from your liver, which allows your liver to get back working properly and clean your blood and help to feed your body. So that's one of the benefits right there. The other is the garlic in Extendovite helps to boost your natural immune system so you don't catch a cold. And if you do catch a cold, you only get it for maybe a day while everybody else is sick for a week to 10 days, and it doesn't even stop you from working. I had the Norwalk virus once, and if you know about that one, you're losing body fluids from both ends. You're dehydrated. Your head hurts. You can't get off the couch except to go to the bathroom. You have to drink, and every time you drink, you have to get rid of some fluid from either the
Yeah,
top
yeah,
or the
yeah,
bottom
yeah,
or both
yeah.
at the same time.
We get the
I only
image.
had it for a day when everybody else was sick for over a week.
Well, I think, a lot of people, and certainly my wife is very much in this category,